I give you Jonathan Perkins.
Well, good morning, everyone. How are you feeling this morning? First of all, I want to welcome our newest married couple who I just saw come in from Puerto Rico, and that's Byron and Nicole. Where are you guys? It's great to see you guys. We have such an amazing community here, don't we? I just have to start out by saying I've been here, a little less than 3 months, and I am so in love with our church. So thank you guys for being awesome. Thank you for making this such a great community. And on behalf of the Perkins family, we're in love with you guys. So thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you for that too. First of all, I also want to welcome anyone watching online. Really appreciate you tuning in. It's always great to have people all over the world watch, what we do, and hopefully we can get a message out. And I'm really excited about kicking off this series. And I want to start out with this photo right here. That is me in 7th grade. So you can see that was when you had the dress shirts over top of the t-shirt. Anybody rocked that out there before? Okay, a couple people confessing, that's awesome. And you can see under there is my Billy Joel t-shirt. That was one of my first major concerts. Interestingly enough, the Beastie Boys opened up for him. I don't know how that happened, but that was also the time where you used to flip your collar up and rock it like that, and maybe some Reeboks, white Reeboks on the feet. You remember middle school, guys? Remember what that was like? Do you remember that environment? Middle school is such an interesting time. There I am, 7th grade, and it was all about trying to fit in. It's all about trying to be cool. It's all about trying to just find your place with your peers in the world. And I'll never forget that there was a girl that I liked, and her name was Jody Papusha. Yes, indeed, Jody Papusha. And Jody was a cheerleader. She's blonde, and I thought, man, this girl is amazing. And you know when you like somebody, all you want to do is just impress them. And so, of course I had my dress shirt and my Billy Joel shirt on, but I thought I needed a haircut. And so before school, I stopped by the barber. Who does that? I don't know who does that, but I did that. So I got my hair cut, and then I was in a rush, and so, I just rushed off to school. And in literature class, I happened to get sat right next to Jody Papusha. And so there I was next to Jody, and we're having a great time. And have you ever had the experience when it's somebody you're trying to impress or somebody you like, and even if they tell a joke that's not really funny, you laugh really hard? You're like, ah, ha, ha. So she was telling these jokes, and I remember at one point, she said something, and I laughed, and as my head went down, a huge chunk of hair fell off of my head onto my white sheet of paper, and she said, "Ew!" Can somebody give me a hug right now? Never dated Jody Papusha, but that's okay. I was waiting for my wife, my awesome wife, Carla. So it's all good. Don't cry any tears for me. But middle school is such an interesting time because we're trying to impress people, and there's a lot of fear. And I think the fear of man can be a huge theme in our life at that point. Would you agree? And it really manifests itself in three key ways. The fear of exposure, the fear of rejection, and the fear of being hurt. The fear of exposure, digging in, is that we fear people because they can expose us and humiliate us. Ever have that fear before? The fear of rejection is because people can reject us, ridicule us, or despise us. And then the fear of being hurt is we fear people because they can attack, oppress, or even threaten us. Let's go to the next slide. That's why in this series I'm excited to kick off. It's called, as you can see, When Small is Big. Because sometimes people become a little too big in our lives, don't they? And their opinions become a little too big. Now, a lot of the inspiration for this message and the future messages from this book right here, When People Are Big and God Is Small, by Edward T. Welch. Anybody ever read that before? Like one person. That is great. For the other 300 and those you watching online, I highly suggest that you get this book. If you feel that any of this resonates with you, this book can help you a lot. So much of what he says in there really hit me hard and resonated with me personally. And out of that comes this series. Also want to thank Paul Trimble because we've been working on this a little together. And so let's go to the next slide here, because the week 1 today is going to be all about recognizing the fear of man. Week 2 is about identifying. And week 3 is about purging. A little fear detox. So week 1, recognize. Week 2, identify. And week 3, purge. Let's keep moving. In a couple weeks, or not even, a lot of us who are qualified are going to vote. And when I say qualified, I just mean the age and you're registered. Maybe qualifications go deeper than that. Maybe they should go deeper than that. I don't know. But we're just talking about that right now. And a lot of people are going to get that sticker. Now, what's interesting is that I don't think that every one of us have left the fear of man at the door of our middle school. I think a lot of us have carried the fear of man into our 20s, some into our 30s, some into our 40s. You see where I'm going with this? Some in our 50s, and on. You could be 95 years old and still have the fear of man. And it can happen in sneaky ways. Do you think that the I voted sticker can be related to the fear of man in some way? Of course, because it's in my message right here. Okay. So it's interesting. The U.S. government will spend millions on I voted stickers. In fact, with about 230,000 registered voters at 15 cents a sticker, that could be upwards of 34 million, but let's just say at least a couple $1 million in stickers. Why would we spend a couple $1 million in stickers when it could go to you having a nice new yacht or car or something like that? Well, the reason is that they did a study on some previous elections, and you know what they found out? They found out that when they polled people who could have voted but didn't vote, that up to 50% of them lied and said, I voted. Why would you lie and say you voted if you didn't vote? It's because of the fear of judgment of your peers. Because of the fact that as a culture, there is some kind of a pride, I voted, and you want to fit in with your peers. And so when you fear the judgment of your peers or the people around you, your family, your friends, the fear of man can take hold and you can start to do all kinds of stuff. Lying and more. And it can hurt us. It can destabilize our lives. So you may not be wearing the I voted sticker as a boast, a preemptive strike against people asking you whether you voted or not. I'm not trying to project that on you, okay? So calm down at home back there. But maybe you have a pure heart about it. But just consider, because today is about recognizing. What about procrastination? Any procrastinators out there? Raise your hand if you're a procrastinator. Almost the entire room. I don't know if that's a good thing or what, but I appreciate your honesty. Now, if you wanted to raise your hand, but you didn't, You see where I'm going with this? See what I did right there? Uh-huh. You know, a friend of mine was saying recently that every once in a while he's got these big projects. And the day the big projects come, he finds himself procrastinating the whole day, just pushing it off. And I know some of you guys are like that. Some of you guys are not neat freaks. But the day that you have to get that term paper in, that room, that carpet that hasn't seen the light of day in months, suddenly becomes immaculate. Mom, can I get the steam cleaner? You know, and you're trying to clean it up. That desk at your office when you get that big report suddenly gets amazingly organized. You got to straighten out every paper clip in a row. Why do we procrastinate? Well, in his case, he started digging deeper in his own heart and his mind. He said, why do I procrastinate about this? And then he realized this. Because these projects go out and are seen by a bunch of people. And he's fearing judgment. He's fearing ridiculing. And it was great. It was awesome. He was able to get in touch with that. But how many of us are in touch with that here? Some of us, I would say, we go, oh, you know, I totally get it. I can see the way that some of this can happen. But some of us might feel like we're strong. We might say, hey, you know what? Jonathan, I appreciate this message. It's for my wife. It's for my neighbor. It's for this guy right here. But it's not really for me. I would just urge you to stay tuned in for this message and the rest of the series, because I have seen strong people think that the fear of man is not affecting their hearts, but really, in super sneaky ninja ways, it creeps up in there. And it can be destructive in your relationship. It can be destructive to your career. And it can even block you from God. And that happened to a certain Roman governor. And his name's Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate, even if you're here today and you're an atheist or a Buddhist and you don't even know a lot about Christianity, a lot of people even know about Pontius Pilate because that famous, I wash my hands of this. Even in Spanish, this is like such a popular phrase. Me lavo las manos. Can you guys say that with me? Me lavo las manos. Directly translated, I wash the hands, but and body parts in Spanish aren't possessive. Anyways, I digress. That was a freebie for today. But Pontius Pilate was a Roman governor, and Tiberius appointed him the 5th prefect of Judea. That meant he had a lot of power. He had soldiers under his command. He had the power of life and death. If he said someone was to die, they would die. And if he said they would live, they would live. And even if the Jewish rulers in that area, the Sanhedrin, if they said that person should be executed, he could overturn it. And so he went to Judea with his wife. And there he was ruling. And what's interesting is, I don't know, those of you guys who are familiar with his character a little bit, I don't know if you fell into a little bit of the trap that I did, but I always perceived him as kind of mousy. And then I watched this Bible AD miniseries. Have you guys seen that? And Pontius Pilate was depicted as being this ruthless, cruel, dictator type guy. And that totally floored me. I was like, wait a second. Have I been kind of preaching this guy a little bit too mousy all these years? And so I started researching him. And sure enough, Pilate was cruel. He had executions that there's just no trial for. The first thing he did when he came into Judea is he brought all of the Roman emblems and the signs and the symbols and put them right in Jerusalem. No other prefect before him had done that. He antagonized the Jews so much that there was this huge protest, and he sent the soldiers in and said, just kill them all if they don't comply. And the Jews, who had so much pride for their God and for what was right, they literally all got down and bared their necks and said, kill us. So finally, after 6 days, he just pulled the soldiers back and said, okay, this is a little crazy. There's another time where he spent money on an aqueduct, and they went to protest that, and he sent in his soldiers dressed as civilians and just butchered and maimed and killed a bunch of people. That was not the Pilate that I had expected. So when I was thinking about how the fear of man might affect Pilate, it was interesting because I said, well, I didn't really pick the easiest Bible character because it seems like he's strong. It seems like he's confident. And yet as you start to look at his story, you start to see, wait a second, there was some definitive fear in his life. And a lot had to do with, he wasn't so afraid of the Jews, I believe, but he was afraid of Rome. He was afraid of his boss. He was afraid of what Tiberius would say and what Tiberius would do to him. And some of us are afraid of our boss, so we can relate. Maybe we don't think our boss would pull us out and execute us, but it could feel like that a little bit. And so we're going to pick up his story, and we're going to read a little bit about Pilate. In John 18, in verse 28, it says, "Then the Jewish leaders took Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor." Okay, so they're going to his palace. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanness, they did not enter the palace because they wanted to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate came out to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" "If he were not a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law. But we have no right to execute anyone," they objected. This took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about the kind of death he was going to die. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked. "Or did others talk to you about me?" We're actually going to read a good chunk of scripture this morning, so I hope you guys are ready for that. Are we locked in here? You guys tracking? So Jesus said, "Is that your own idea? Or did someone tell you that?" I love how from the very beginning, Jesus is kind of putting it out there. Is that what you really think? Or are you just drafting off of what other people think? How many times in your life, what if Jesus came right now? And what if he said, "Hey, are you in the major you really want to be in, student?" I see some people glancing away. Or is that what your parents want? Is that the career that you really want to be in? Or is that what you think your peers think that you should be in? So many times the fear of man can enter our life, and Jesus puts it, I think, right before us. Let's keep going. "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into this world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." "What is truth?" retorted Pilate. When you can't lock into even what you believe, you can't even figure out anything anymore, right? Pilate says, "What is truth? What is truth? What is truth? Baby, oh, sorry. Song gets stuck in my head. What is truth? What is truth? What is truth to you? Some of us may be stuck not even wanting to study the Bible fully and committing because we may have fears of what people around us think. I mean, the fear of man can just pervade our hearts, but you can see kind of how lost Pilate is here. Do you see that? Let's keep moving. Next slide. With this, he went out again and said to the Jews gathered there and said, "I find no basis for a charge against him." So right here we see Pilate, he believes he's innocent. There's nothing that he could see that's wrong. "But it is your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of the Passover. Do you want me to release the king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "No, not him. Give us Barabbas." Now Barabbas had just taken part in an uprising. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. So the soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe and went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." And they slapped him in the face. Once more, Pilate came out and said to the Jews gathered there, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him." So hold on, let's pause right here. Look what's happening. They say, no. We want Barabbas to be free, not Jesus. You know what Pilate does? He goes, beats him up because he thinks he's innocent, and he brings him back out, beaten up, and says, okay, so he's really innocent. I find no basis, but now I beat him up, so can we keep moving and let him free? Because something in his mind, I think, tells him that Jesus is innocent. But his fear of man is overpowering what he really believes. So that's the second time that he says no basis of judgment. As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify, crucify!" But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me," third time, "I find no basis for a charge against him." Well, Pilate, if you find no basis for a charge, and you have the power of life and death, and if you believe he's innocent, then why don't you free him? Now, it's easy to throw a stone at Pilate, but is there ever a time when you know that something around you that's going on is not right, but because you are concerned or fear what other people think, you feel locked up? Online bullying is one of the hugest things happening right now, and bullying in general, quite honestly. And if you're a teen watching at home, or a campus student, or anybody really, or here live, that's the kind of moment when you see something happening and you just get afraid. Because there's a lot of stuff going on in your mind and your heart. In fact, Kelly Robbins is starting she's doing this whole bullying initiative, anti-bullying initiative. It would not be good if she's doing a bullying initiative. It's anti-bullying initiative. Let me get that straight. And I'm so proud of her and her work, trying to launch that. But he's locked up. He's not taking a stand because of the fear of man. Let's keep going. The Jewish leaders insisted, "We have a law, and according to that law, he must die because he claimed to be the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid, and he went back inside the palace. Why? Because suddenly, the man that he was interviewing, he realizes, wait, king, not of this world, wait, claims to be the Son of God? There is something about this guy. And so he's even more afraid, and he goes back inside to question him more. And this is what happens. It says, "Where do you come from?" Pilate asked Jesus. But Jesus gave no answer. "Do you refuse to speak to me?" Pilate said. Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you? Let's keep going. Jesus answered, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." So Pilate certainly said, "Don't you know I can free you? I can crucify you." Could you imagine how he would have felt when Jesus responded and said, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above"? That must have sent some sort of chill up his spine. Don't you think? And yet, at this same time, somewhere right around here, his wife rushes in. And his wife tells him, "Pilate, do not have anything to do with this innocent man, because I have suffered terribly in a dream because of him." Now, a lot of us have nightmares, right? But they go away, usually by the morning, even forget half of them. In the middle of the day, she's coming and she suffered the whole day. What kind of dream was this that she suffered? But you think that Pilate listened to that? Husbands, please listen to your wives. please, for the love of all that's good, at least listen to their nightmares, at the very least. From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free. Hold on. He tried to set Jesus free. Question, was he a victim? Oh, I tried, but I just couldn't. You decide. But the Jewish leaders kept shouting, if you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar. Now that also sent a shudder up his spine. Because what they basically were saying is, if you let him go, we're going straight to Tiberius. And if Tiberius finds out about this big revolt that we're all having, you're in big trouble. Pilate brought Jesus out and sat down in the judge's seat at the place known as the stone pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation of Passover. It was about noon. Here is your king, Pilate said to the Jews. But they shouted, take him away, crucify him. Shall I crucify your king, Pilate asked. We have no king but Caesar, the chief priests answered, condemning themselves. And then finally, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified. What a saga. What a saga. But here's the thing. What can we learn today? What can you do about this? What resonates with you in Pilate's story that maybe you could take away in your life? What's a lesson that you can learn from him? Well, number one, I think today, the whole point of today's lesson and today's message is just to recognize. It's awareness. Listen to your mind. Listen to your conscience. Listen to your body. Your mind, you have invisible scripts. When your friends comment on your outfit and you start to feel insecure, not that that's ever happened to us before, there's a script going on in your mind. What about your conscience? Sometimes your conscience gets pricked, like Pilate's wife's, conscience in the dream. And I'm sure all throughout that interaction with Jesus, Pilate's conscience must have been pricked. Even your body, guys, your body tells you often what you're thinking, feeling, and experiencing spiritually. It's not actually easy for me to get up here and do messages. I have to be honest. It wouldn't be the first fun activity that I would choose. But why is it not usually as much fun? It's not as much fun or as fulfilling, rather, if I allow the fear of judgment to override the good I could do with the message. And I battle that often. Because I know it's going to be recorded. I know it's going to be online for all eternity. And if I totally just tank some message and it's just horrible and nobody laughs at the jokes and whatever, there it is for all eternity. But you know what? That's no way to live. Because the good of what could be done and serving God and honoring him should outweigh the fear of man. But it's a hurdle, an obstacle we have to overcome. And sometimes our own bodies tell us that. There is a woman that I read recently in this blog post that she posted, Mia. Let's go next slide. And it's interesting because she's a kind of life coach, a London-based consultant that helps people to get out of their comfort zones. So you know what she did? She said, I got to put my money where my mouth is. And so she decided that because she grew up and kind of made this wall of protection around her, of not being vulnerable with people, that she would engage in 100 vulnerable conversations to try to break barriers and become more vulnerable with people. And you know what happened? She's about a third of the way through. And she said it has been horrible. It's been horrible and completely exhilarating all at the same time, actually. It's been horrible because as she goes to engage in these conversations, her body locks up. Look at this quote of what she says right here. She said, every single one and she calls them like intimate moments. Every single one has me terrified beforehand. Sometimes I'm so afraid I feel physically ill, but my desire for more spontaneity and increased connection in my life makes me take the plunge into the pool of suspense over and over again. In these intimate moments, I share parts of myself that I'd rather hide, parts which I might get judged, misunderstood, or rejected. This has been my single biggest fear throughout the process. What if the relationship ends over this? Good riddance, you might think, but the danger feels real. Fear has a way of feeling disproportionately more substantial than the threat that triggered it in the first place. What's so interesting is that the fear of man can throw us out of whack. We can make people's opinions so big, and they don't deserve to be that big. We can make the fear of exposure, the fear of rejection, and the fear of being hurt, it can become so huge in our life that our meter of what's right and wrong gets totally thrown out of whack. I have a 2006 Nissan Frontier pickup truck, and that thing has served us well. We got it in Los Angeles and used, and then we took it to El Salvador and had it there for 3 years, then took it to Baton Rouge, and now we have it over here. So it's made its way around the world. Well, recently, a very important gauge went out of whack. This one. Of all the gauges, it's a very concerning gauge to go out of whack. Now, when you see this emotionally, don't you feel kind of good? It's like, whew, full. But what about when you see this? Little tear coming down your cheek? Well, here's what would happen, guys. Here's what would happen. Is that the float or something when it would get messed up, and so when it was 3/4 of the way full, it would just drop to that position. Do you know how many times I would be driving along knowing I had filled up my tank a couple of days before and I hadn't gone that far, and suddenly I see that and I go, oh. There's something emotionally inside me that would freak out, like, I'm about to run out of gas. So that's why we just bought an electric car. No, actually we really did, but that's aside from it. But so what would happen is we would be driving along and know that we would have a half a tank at least, but that would freak us out. So we called Ken Perry, who's local, and Ken Perry, thank you Ken, helped us out to fix it. So you can clap for Ken. Yeah, thanks. Here's the issue though, is that what we had to do mentally was reprogram our brain, because it was about 3 months where it wasn't working. And so we would fill up our tank, we would set the odometer, and then we drive along and knew that we could get about 325, miles in range, and we would know every time I would look at it and kind of freak out a little bit, oh, okay, I know that I'm safe. Interestingly enough, I think it's a little bit of a parallel about us and the fear of man. Because when we have somebody comment about us, I might have somebody, hey, you look pretty skinny. You know how many thoughts go through your mind at that point? Hey, you gained a little weight, huh? Those kind of things. And our emotions can go out of whack, and we really can get disoriented. Today, try to recognize when the fear of man might be affecting you. So to help you out, I made a top 10 list. Okay? You guys ready? This is the when small is big top 10 list. I wish George is here, give me a little drum roll or, piano thing, but we're going to go. Number 10, do you ever feel as if you might be exposed as an imposter? Maybe at work, maybe at school, sports, who knows? Number 9, are you always second-guessing decisions because of what other people might think? Number 8, are you afraid of making mistakes that will make you look bad in other people's eyes? Number 7, do you get easily embarrassed? I'm shy. Or you might be too concerned about what other people think. Number 6, sorry. Do you ever lie, especially the little white lies? Because those are the ones that help cover shame and keep us off the radar that we might be disappointing someone. Number 5, are you jealous of other people? Number 4, do other people often make you angry or depressed? Are they making you crazy? Is your whole household making you crazy? Number 3, when you compare yourself with other people, do you feel good about yourself? That one's especially ninja sneaky, because that's the one where as you feel successful, you feel better because you're comparing yourself and pushing that down because you feel, anyways, we'll get into that more later. Number 2, do you feel like you need the approval of others and are insecure if you don't have it? And number 1, drum roll please, do you rush to see how many people liked your latest post on Facebook, Instagram, etc., and get slightly depressed if your numbers are low? Hashtag just saying. All right. Let's keep going. All of those things have one common denominator. All of those things is that people's opinions and the fear of man becomes bigger than the fear of God and displaces the fear of God in your life. And so that controls how you think and what you do, because what you fear controls you. What you fear controls you. And so it's so true, Proverbs 29:25. Fear of the man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. And we're going to end it there today, but note this. The only thing powerful enough to displace the fear of man is the fear of the Lord. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. So let's go ahead and we'll take communion together, and hopefully my prayer is that this has been very helpful and will be very helpful this week. But don't forget, let's recognize this week where the fear of man is affecting us, and even maybe write it down or tell somebody. Let's go ahead and let's pray. Father, we're so thankful for you. God, thank you for showing us how big you are and can be. And Father, if there's anyone here today, live, or anyone watching who does not realize how big that you really are and how safe that they can be when in your presence, the way you can hold us and protect us and love us, because perfect love drives out fear. God, you have a love that's unimaginable. That's even why Jesus would die on the cross, to reconcile us with you. God, thank you for that. As we take communion, we thank you for the way that he showed his perfect love. God, I don't know why I get out of whack sometimes and fear man, or any of us here praying together. Why we can let that control us. But God, my prayer is over every single person listening to this and praying together. God, please bless them. Please help the fear of man not to control or dominate their life. Please help people to recognize what's happening and have that awareness turn into something great for them, so they can accomplish your will and the destiny and the beautiful destiny that you have set out for them. We love you. We thank you. And it's in the mighty name of Jesus we pray. Amen.